Welcome to the Digital Edge, where we sit down with industry leaders to discuss the innovations and ideas shaping the future of marketing. I'm Lisa Morton, Incubeta's Group Marketing Director, and today we're turning our focus to marketing profitability and how to prove the true value of marketing, securing investment, and buy-in from the business. Joining me today is Damien Bennett, Incubeta UK's Chief Strategy Officer. Renowned for building sustainable solutions for key digital marketing challenges, Damien will be explaining how businesses can switch up the narrative around marketing, turning it into a business function worthy of investment rather than a costly must-have. If you're looking to optimize cross-channel activity, prove the value of marketing as a profit driver, and secure business investment, this episode is packed with valuable insights to help you outperform. So let's dive in. Welcome, Damien. I'm so excited to have you here today.
It's very nice to be here, and it's also a little strange talking to you in this environment of a podcast, seeing that we've worked really closely together for over 10 years now. Like, I'm used to just walking up to your desk and that's where we do the podcast, and we're just righting the wrongs of marketing. But it's lovely to be here. Lovely to be here.
Honestly, I've been so excited for this conversation for a while because you're right, we do have some incredible chats at my desk. So let's kick off now. Your job title is Chief Strategy Director. Can you paint a bit of a picture about what your role means and what sort of challenges are you seeing from clients?
Yeah, I think this is like the secret of all chief strategy officers, is that nobody really knows what we do. And I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of like committed to that as an industry thing, that we're not allowed to share what we do. But roughly speaking, what I do is I help us from an internal perspective with making sure that we've got really strong capabilities, that we're developing in the right areas, and that we're delivering solutions that really do create value for our customers. So that's kind of like one area of my job. But the area of my job that I really love is the work that I do with clients, helping them to kind of take a step back, see the bigger picture, and build marketing strategies that span more than one capability. So how do we bring together data, technology, creative media to drive growth? And I think the working closely with clients is essential to the internal work that I do, because it's their challenges and the opportunities that they see and the pain points that they face and the barriers that they need to overcome, which really then feed what we focus on as an organization.
It's interesting because you talk about creating solutions that cover multiple capabilities, which we're hearing more and more about. Like, in the past, it was somebody came to you for paid search or somebody came to you for display, but now we're really needing to see these solutions interwoven in a very unique and interesting way. What gets you really excited about that?
Well, I think we're having bigger conversations with businesses than we've ever had. So when I first started, going back 15, 16 years, what we would do is we would focus on the technical detail of a channel. So for example, somebody would come to us, we would go into their Google Ads account, we'd do an audit, we'd tell them where the growth opportunities existed within that audit, and then we would have a roadmap that would basically improve the performance that they saw from their paid search activity. I think now we're in an environment where a couple of things have changed. One is that the maturity of most advertisers is much higher, so it's much less likely that you're going to go into a paid search account, for example, and see that there's some game-changing opportunities that a business has available to them. But also the controls that exist within those accounts have changed as well. There's a much greater prevalence of AI, of automation, which means that there's less need for those manual interventions. I think that's been quite exciting for us as a business, because it's allowed us to look at the bigger picture. And if I think about the clients that I work with, generally speaking, there's still a very significant opportunity to improve marketing effectiveness, but it sits at a level above that technical audit. So really, if I think about most businesses still have an opportunity to invest better across different channels and across different customer stages. So one of the common things that we'll see, especially with large digital advertisers, is that they invest very heavily in performance marketing channels, but they struggle to justify investment outside of that in kind of brand and consideration areas. And then the other challenge is understanding how different capabilities work together as well. So I'll give you an example. A client of mine asked me probably about a month ago, is it better for us to invest £100,000 more in our digital media activity, or is it better for us to take that same £100,000 and invest it in stronger, better performing creative? And again, that's a conversation which is one level up from what I think digital marketing agencies would have had historically, and is really exciting because you're starting to focus on conversations which can really move the needle for businesses.
Now, when we talk about investment and we talk about this need to get investment, the ultimate kind of goal is growth for the business. That is what most are trying to achieve long term. And now, Damien, we have had arguments about this in the past. Is that the number one thing everybody's trying to achieve? And you might say it's not. Different brands have different objectives, but ultimately, long term growth is the purpose. You wouldn't do marketing if you weren't trying to grow your business. But it's a word thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean to drive growth for a business?
Yeah, and I would argue that a marketing team is primarily a growth team, right? When you really kind of like strip back what marketing's role is within an organization, it is to drive growth, which might be about acquiring new customers or getting existing customers to spend more. But marketing is the key channel for most businesses, the key department when it comes to achieving growth. Um, I think growth does mean different things to different businesses that are different stages, but ultimately, what most businesses, the vast majority of businesses, are looking to achieve is they're looking to achieve growth in their bottom line, in their net profit. That's what they want to achieve, right? So it's not just about market share gain. It's not just about driving revenue. It's about driving the right type of revenue from the right type of customers, which are going to allow businesses to scale efficiently. That's what businesses really mean, I think, when it comes to growth. Marketing, I think, has maybe been a little bit overly focused on revenue without context. And what I mean by that is being very happy driving a sales number, but not necessarily knowing whether the sales it's driving are efficient, whether they're coming from the customers that really matter to the organization, and other things as well. So I think some of the context behind the sales is where marketing could be looking a little bit deeper.
Do you think that context is what is stopping marketing leaders from being able to get that investment to being able to achieve that growth? Or is it much deeper than that?
I think it's I think it's a little deeper. I think it's a little deeper. I certainly think that that's part of it, but not having that context, I think, relates to a bigger issue when it comes to marketing leaders having a conversation with their board of directors, for example, and that's more related to trust in the numbers. And I think the marketing industry would consider itself to be a data-driven industry. Certainly, data is really prevalent in what we do, but I don't know whether we're an industry which has used data as well as we could have. And a good example of that is performance reporting. A lot of businesses are still kind of addicted to performance that sits within their analytics platform, so Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, whatever platform it is. And I think if I put myself in the role of a CEO or a CFO, I think it's very easy to challenge that performance data. Is it incremental? Were the sales profitable? Were the customers people that were going to return? Were they new or were they returning? And I think that immediately creates a stumbling block that means that kind of the source of truth that a marketing leader is pointing to doesn't feel to senior audiences like the truth. And so you have this trust issue from the very start where businesses aren't quite really sure in the data that they're looking at from a performance perspective.
Now, this is easier said than done, of course.
Yeah.
These are quite complicated things we're talking about being able to achieve, and do need a solid foundation. For that marketing leader who's feeling really overwhelmed by that, because I've been there. I've looked at the numbers, I've looked at the data, I've yelled at salespeople for not putting the right data in. How do you take that first step and overcome that hurdle to get your business to a position where you can be having those conversations and changing that perception?
I think you've got to have a measurement framework, and that measurement framework needs to talk specifically to your marketing strategy and what you're trying to achieve within that. And you need to have that conversation with stakeholders across the business. So you might need to have that conversation, obviously, with your C-suite, but also with trading teams, so that everybody's on the same page around what success looks like. I also think that you've got to have the honest conversation as well. No data's perfect. Nothing is 100% measurable. And I think putting that on the table immediately to say that you understand the limitations in your model is important as well, because that allows you to kind of start the conversation off with that layer of honesty. So I think that's really important. But I think getting everybody behind a measurement framework, making sure that there's a proper consultative process in place to put that measurement framework together is really critical and often overlooked.
And realistically, it's kind of this first step in changing that perception of marketing. If you bring your C-suite on the journey, if you bring the teams on the journey and have aligned goals and what success looks like, it makes a massive difference to everybody's input to what you're working on.
Yeah, exactly, and that's I think that there's maybe another point within that as well, which is that the measurement framework should include and work from metrics which really matter. So, for example, if you're looking to appraise whether you've been successful with brand building, then a bad metric to talk to is something like reach, because reach doesn't really mean anything. Like how does reach, if I'm a CEO, how does reach actually then translate into driving business growth? But that there are awareness metrics which you can have in place, which clearly do have a knock-on consequence when it comes to growth. So, for example, the number of people that are searching for your brand term, right? It's a simple metric. It's a metric that everybody understands, and everybody can understand how that's a metric that supports business growth. So I think that again, one of the things that we have to do as marketers is we really have to look at the metrics that we use as part of our plans and ask ourselves, are these meaningful? Do they ladder up to the business outcome that we're trying to achieve?
I love that statement. Metrics that matter. So everybody out there, any marketing you are doing, consider what are those metrics that matter. Now let's dive into the data a little bit more. Customer-centric marketing is so important. If you're not reaching those customers on a personal level or at a level they can relate to, you're just not going to win them over and you're not going to stand out amongst your competition. But data sources are everywhere. I think us as a company, we probably have 20 different data sources we're pulling into one location. How can you build an accurate representation of your customers and reflect this in your marketing?
Yeah, there's different ways in which you can take this question, right? So one is to go down a very technical route. So one is to say, right, okay, well, what you need to put in place is you need to put in place a really strong CDP. You need to make sure that you've got the right connectors to your different data sources, that they're then pulled into a single view, which is then pushed into the platforms that you use to manage your activity. So and that stuff is important, but I actually think it's the simple things that people maybe often miss. Talking to your customers, making sure that you have an understanding of how they feel when they shop with you, making sure that you have an understanding of what expectations they have of you as a business and how well you're meeting those expectations. Those are simple things that don't require a big technical solution, but they're often overlooked. One of the things that we do with our clients as part of an onboarding process is we build a customer journey map. And what we do is we say, okay, well, when somebody is looking to buy the product that you sell, what's the journey that they go through? How do they research? How do they make their decision? And what are the types of things that get them over the line? And then we think about the emotions and the pain points that they're feeling at each of those stages, and how the product that we're selling can help overcome those pain points. Um, and that exercise it's so valuable, and you often end up finding kind of I guess you often end up finding these gems that you would never have seen before. We do some work with an IT consultancy, and we did a customer journey mapping exercise for them, and we were looking to be able to target CTOs. So that was who we were looking to be able to target, and kind of you make all these assumptions around where CTOs are and where they spend their time, right? But we found this amazing Instagram page, right? It's called Consulting Humor. It has hundreds of thousands of followers, right? And it's followed by all of these people that either work for the big consultancy groups or they used to work with the consulting groups, and they basically just take the piss, right? But what we found was that the target audience for this customer had a huge overlap with this consulting humor page, and it became an avenue that we could reach this customer through, and became a hugely successsul part of our strategy. But we'd have never found that if we didn't do the customer journey exercise with the client. So, I think that's just doing the simple things to understand your customer is often what gets forgotten.
That's really interesting because I think we've become so far entrenched in digital and data and having everything kind of funneled into us through all of these different sources that we kind of forget you can just talk to your customers. They are there, you can listen to them. And that's really powerful that all of these data touch points don't necessarily hold a candle to just having an open conversation with them.
Yeah, I think it's built into human beings, right? That the more effort you put into something, the better the results that you'll get. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes that's true, and I'm not advocating that people don't work hard, because hard work often does lead to good results. But I think that the converse of that is that we think that all positive outcomes come from lots of hard work, lots of complexity, and sometimes that means that we overlook quick wins, low-hanging fruits, things that don't take lots of effort but can drive a big uplift. And I think that that's really true of the marketing industry at the moment. There's a lot of looking to the big technical solution, big transformation projects, when in fact it could be as simple as changing the layout of your shopping experience on your website. That which might take somebody a day, but might improve your conversion rate by 5%, which is worth millions of pounds or dollars to the organization. So I think we have to be really careful of that in wanting to do the big transformative things, we don't overlook things that might take less effort but actually have a much stronger impact.
There's almost this kind of, listen, we know you need immediate results. We know you need fast things. So let's not necessarily skip to the big massive transformation products, but let's take this journey. Let's hit the low-hanging fruit and let's work through it and get you to a point that really drives proper sustainable growth for your business.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I mean, the work that you and I have done on our outperform proposition, right? We have those entryways, and the first one is rapid results. And the reason why the first one is rapid results is because that's what every business ultimately wants. They want results that come quickly. But it's also one of the things which is commonly overlooked is those rapid results, because people are distracted by the big shiny thing that takes lots of time to be able to implement. So So we're really focused on that as an organization, alongside obviously our other entryways of adaptive automation, helping people to use AI and automation more effectively, and generative growth, where our bigger transformation projects do sit. But we never want to overlook the fact that for a lot of businesses, there are opportunities at their fingertips that they can take advantage of.
Now, I want to jump back a bit because everything that underlines what we've been talking about goes back to what we were saying about measurement. To be able to deliver this and talk about those metrics that matter, you need to be able to measure it. You need to know how to do that. We talked about a framework and getting that in place, but how do you cut through the noise of kind of all the different technologies that are out there, and how do you actually find measurement that works?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the person who's able to answer that question, it will probably be a billionaire. But what I do think with measurement is that it's a very exciting space, because I think that there's a lot of technology that's becoming available now, that wasn't there before. I think people recognize the limitations of legacy models, especially things like last click attribution. I think that they recognize the inherent flaws of those types of models. And so you've got this space where there is a lot of innovation at the moment. Um, what I've always thought about measurement is that what what businesses are really trying to balance is accuracy and actionability. Um, and the way to think about this is, the more accurate your measurement, typically the less actionable it is. So for me, the most accurate way of measuring sales is to run an incrementality test. Um, but you can only run incrementality tests every so often. They take a lot of resource to run correctly, um, and so therefore they're not as actionable as you might like them to be. On the other hand, the data that sits within your media platform is super actionable. It's there. It gets updated every minute. In some cases, it's broken down at a really granular view, um, but it's not that accurate. So it's in finding that balance between being both accurate and actionable that I think the solution sits. What I think is a very exciting space is this idea of an agile MMM, where you can use predictive modeling to have the accuracy of a marketing mix model, but the actionability that you would usually associate with an analytics platform. And I think we've as a business, we've put a lot of resource into a solution that we've called seamless measurement, which does that. It's essentially an always-on marketing mix model. We think that that's a super exciting space because we're bridging that gap between accuracy and actionability. And we think that that is a really viable alternative, and better alternative for businesses than the kind of the analytics reporting which most businesses have historically used.
That's really exciting. I say that like I don't know what's happening. I absolutely know it's happening. But I am really genuinely excited about this opportunity. I mean, it will open up measurement to so many people who really haven't had that opportunity to invest in hardcore incrementality testing and or a full out MMM approach, which takes time and a lot of data to be able to put together.
Yeah, and it's really critical. It's really critical. I mean, I'm sure that there's going to be people, listening to this in leadership roles in marketing who have the headache that they know things like video advertising will be really successful for them, but they don't have data to support that when they're making their case to the business. Um, and to kind of give you an example of that, we did a study where we looked at the difference between how a marketing mix model valued online video advertising versus how a last touch attribution model valued it, and the last touch attribution model undervalued business by about 500%. Right? So it's really critical. It's really critical for businesses to look at measurement, because so many of those opportunities do sit in digital, in using digital to build brand awareness, in using it to drive consideration, and businesses, really do need to look to diversify and balance their budgets better, across awareness, consideration, and conversion activity.
Now, we're talking about measurement. Part of measurement is also having the dashboards to be able to view that. Now, I know, Damien, you have a very specific view on dashboards, and I'd love to pick at that. We know marketing can have bias. I try, as much as I try to look at my data and be realistic, it's really hard not to be like, oh, there was a 7% increase in leads. That's great. But when you dig into it, you realize they might not necessarily be the right type of leads you want to be getting in. So, how do we make reporting and dashboarding more accurate and take away those biases so we know we're getting the right view of our marketing approach?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely not a fan of most marketing dashboards, and the reason for that, I think they're a great example of where the marketing industry has data at their fingertips, but maybe doesn't use that data as effectively as we could do. And I think most people know this, by the way. I don't think I'm breaking news to anybody. The challenge I guess I have with most marketing dashboards is, first of all, they're not built from accurate data. So if your marketing dashboard is built from last click data driven by your analytics platform, then we all know that's not an accurate view of what's really driving value, right? So that's the first challenge that I have. The second challenge that I have with dashboards is that the interpretation of that data is left to the user. And so what we all do, right, is we all have our biases, and we all want to present things in a way that aligns to our biases, and backs up that the efforts that we took had value. And again, we see that all the time in marketing, that people use their marketing dashboard, or people refer to the results in their marketing dashboard when they support what they want to show. But suddenly, when something isn't successful or doesn't work as we intended, the dashboard is flawed or it's not referred to at all. So, I think the solution here is first of all, if we're going to take the time and effort to build a dashboard and to visualize data, let's make sure that the data that dashboard is built from is accurate, and let's not create a false view of what performance looks like within organizations. And then the second thing is, and this is where I think generative AI can play a really exciting role, is let's have honest appraisals of what worked and what didn't. And I think generative AI is one way in which we can do that. I think probably some listeners will have used Notebook LM already, but I use Notebook LM to do some of those kind of unbiased analyses, and there's a couple of other tools which we're testing as well. But I think that there's also just a culture of curiosity, of test and learn, that businesses should look to establish within their teams as well, which says, look, we know not everything that we do is going to work as we expected it to do, right? And we celebrate and learn from our failures, and we use those to fuel future decisions that we take. And I think having that culture creates an environment where people are much more likely to do an honest appraisal of what worked and what didn't within their campaign.
That's a really interesting, almost ethos. This idea that it's okay to fail, and it's stuff that's been talked about in the industry, but you fail in the right way, you learn, and you compensate quickly, and you make changes, and you're okay with that. Do you find with a lot of our clients that they are afraid to fail?
I think it's about how you dress it up, right? I think if it's test and learn and there's a clear culture around test and learn, I think clients are comfortable with it. Um, I guess it depends on the level that you're testing to. So if you're testing something really material that has a significant investment behind it, then naturally our clients are more reluctant or more hesitant to test those things, or more concerned about failure. And that's completely understandable, because there's a big difference between testing something that's going to cost you £1,000 versus testing something that's going to cost you £1 million. And this is where I think thinking about proof of concepts is really important. When we map out projects for our clients, we have four stages of those products, of those projects rather. The first is unlock, the second is impact, the third is build, and the fourth is scale. We always structure our projects in that way. The second part, being impact, is really important, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that we've got a proof of concept early on that tells us whether this is likely to be successful or not. And so that's a way of being able to manage and create a culture of curiosity, a test and learn environment, without having a really material risk to the organization. So we that's our way of managing it. And I'm a big fan of thinking, what's the proof of concept here? What's the smaller scale test that we can run, which is either going to prove or disprove our theory? And I think running that proof of concept then allows businesses to have much more confidence to take the bigger action.
Because arguably, our whole philosophy as a business is about outperforming, is about really driving marketing to be an unstoppable force for growth. And not just growth, profitable growth. Like, that's what businesses need to do. Now, you can't outperform if you aren't trying new things and growing. If you stand still, your competition's going to blow you out of the water.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And it's, optimization requires failure. You can't optimize anything if it's always going well, right? You've got to be prepared to take actions which might not play out in a positive way, but I think you do have to think about how you manage those actions, and that's where smaller scale tests, proof of concepts come in handy.
Now, I want to jump back to that other two-letter word you talked about when you were talking about dashboards, which is AI. Huge topic at the moment. Everybody's trying to find a way to integrate it and make it work for them and make it work for them effectively. And there's a ton of testing and a ton of trialing. I'm a big fan. I love a bit of playing around with AI. But there's also fear around it. There's also fear of this loss of control. When we look at things like PMAX, people are putting things in a black box and hoping it spits out the best thing. I mean, I put stuff into a dashboard, asked it to analyze it the other day, and I had to go back in because it didn't analyze it correctly. Like, there, there's just, it does its thing but doesn't always do it correctly. So, how do you harness the power of AI without sacrificing that visibility?
So yeah, I think the AI is it's the big shiny thing, right? We're all very excited about what AI can do, and look, I mean, my own personal perspective is that I think AI is the most transformative thing to happen to the world since the internet, right? So I think it's a massive deal. What I see being a very common mistake is that people start with AI. So they say, "All right, we've got AI and we're going to apply it to our business," right? But that rarely works, right? Because you're just using AI for the hell of it in that circumstance. The way that AI works for businesses, or when I've seen it work for businesses, is when businesses say, here's the challenge that I have. Can AI solve for this? Right? So you're starting with the challenge that you have or with the opportunity that you see, and then you're thinking about whether AI can solve for it, rather than saying, here's AI, and then trying to shoehorn it into different parts of your organization. I think that very, very rarely works. And it's also where I think people get into this fatigue of being like, oh my God, I'm hearing about AI again. Um, so I think AI's got to be applied in the right way, and I think it's about starting with a challenge. You know, on one of the internal projects that I'm working on at the moment, what I see is that our team spend a lot of time putting together presentations, for clients, for internal meetings, whatever else it is, and a lot of the time and the effort that goes into the presentations is in things like formatting, right? um, which is, it's hardly the most interesting thing to be spending your time on, and it's also, very time consuming, and doesn't add a lot of value. So, that's one area where I recognise there's a challenge in our business. Ideally, we don't have teams spending lots of time formatting presentations. We'd rather them be working on test and learn strategies, working with their clients, etc. Um, and is there AI that can solve for that? And actually, it turns out that there's a bunch of platforms out there which are trying to solve for that exact challenge. But we're starting with the challenge rather than saying, oh, there's AI here, and we're going to try and apply it to our business.
Personally, that presentation thing is a huge, huge thing on my checklist. That is I think a lot of marketers who have to deal with people trying to use brand and slides will are praying for that day when that becomes a really viable option for them.
Yeah, yeah. The day that somebody can just take the presentation that's in somewhere floating around in my brain and automatically put it on the screen in the meeting room is the day that I'm super happy.
But I don't think it's that far away. I mean, I
Yeah.
look at where AI imagery was even like 3, 4 months ago to where it is now, and I went from people not looking like people and having weird mushed faces and 10 arms and 2 fingers to like you can get a photorealistic AI image at the moment. And that's kind of that first step to them being able to, I know we're getting slightly off topic here, but to genuinely create decent looking slides. And the future with AI, I agree, is transformative.
It is. I mean, it's for me, it's the most transformative thing since the internet. I think it's really important that businesses have AI front of mind, but they need to think about applying it to solve the challenges that they face, or to help them to take advantage of the opportunities that exist. If you just start by trying to shoehorn AI into your business, you just won't be successful. But if you start from a position of, here's our challenge, or here's an opportunity that we see, can AI help us to solve for this, or to help us to do something better, then I think you've got a much stronger chance of success.
Absolutely. Now, when we look into the future, we talked about AI 6 months from now is going to be super exciting. A year from now is going to be completely different from what we see today. But what excites you the most when thinking about the future of marketing?
I think marketing is a really exciting moment right now, because we're starting to think about incrementality. Marketing starting to be positioned much more strongly as a growth driver. I really think that there's a lot of great work going on in the marketing industry. I see, a huge increase in the maturity of marketers and the types of things that they're thinking about. I also think the industry is really getting to grips with how to use data, um, and it's driving a lot of really interesting change. I see a lot of our clients um, really challenging their marketing models, and driving, pretty significant changes in how they think about their investment. So I think that I'm really quite excited about how much change there might well be within the marketing industry over the next 3 years, and it becoming a truly data-driven industry.
Now, with all of those marketing leaders, CMOs, C-suite listening to this, what is that one piece of advice um, you would give them for those who want to get more out of their marketing and to deliver really profitable growth?
I think get everybody on the same page with what the role of marketing is within the organization. So it is amazing. I think if you spoke to most businesses and you said, if I asked the CEO what the role of marketing is, the marketing team what the role of marketing is, the finance team the role of marketing, and the trading team what the role of marketing is, you know, would you get the same answer, right? And I think most businesses, if they were honest, would probably say probably not. So I think getting everybody on the same page around the role of marketing is really important. And if I could add a second after that is what I referred to earlier in our conversation, which is once everybody's clear on the role of marketing, making sure that everybody's clear on what success looks like for marketing as well. And I think if you do those two things, then you start to change the perspective of marketing as being a cost to marketing being an investment. And when we talk about helping businesses helping marketing become an unstoppable force for profitable growth, that's really what we mean. We mean a business seeing marketing as a profit center where it isn't the first thing in the budget that gets cut, right? Because businesses are actually concerned about cutting the marketing budget because they see it as an investment and they know there's a knock-on consequence to their business if they cut that budget. So that I think is where I would start, is get everybody on the same page around the role of marketing, and then make sure that everybody agrees with what success looks like for the marketing department.
Do you know what? It kind of reminds me of that F1 story. Was it the mission of, I'm going to say Mercedes, but it could be McLaren. But they ask everybody in that building, from the CEO to the person who cleans the floors, and you ask them what their purpose is, and they go, it's to make the cars go faster. Cleaning the floors, I help the teams. They can do their jobs better. The cars go faster.
Yeah, yeah. There's some great. I mean, I think just generally, I think within F1, but also in other sports like tennis, athletics, cycling, especially now football, increasingly. I think that there's actually great case studies for marketing to think about around the role of data, the role of communication in transforming those industries. I mean, every single one of those sports has been transformed by data. If you watch a game of football um, now and then compare it to the way that football was played 10 years ago, it's totally different. It's totally different, and data's driven that change. And I think that there's a really nice kind of there's really nice soft case studies, I think, in sport that marketers can apply as well.
I can go on a huge tangent with that, especially with all of the like wearable devices, the Whoop
Yeah,
straps, the,
yeah.
is it Orca rings?
Aura,
Aura
yeah,
rings.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Data is incredibly important, and it, when used appropriately, transforms everything.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, what data and AI can do for people's health is just going to be incredible. I think that's not in any way kind of like related to the world of marketing, but I just think that that's so exciting. Just the ability to be able to recognize health issues very quickly. It shows, that I think sometimes data and AI, they get painted in a very negative light in the media, which I think is a shame because it often forgets about all of the positives that this can bring for us as a society, and medical breakthroughs will come much faster because of data and AI than they've ever come before. And I think I was reading an article, I think it was from New Scientist, and they think that babies being born today will live to an average life expectancy of over 100, and that is driven. That's driven by improvements of health in healthcare, which is driven by data and AI. So, For me, like I also, I worry that AI data is often painted as this big scary thing when in fact it's a huge opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. Now, Damien, we are coming to the end of our time together, and I've got two questions that I always ask everybody. So, my first one for you is, what is your favorite ad campaign?
I have a go-to for this, and it's I think it's the best. I think it's the best marketing campaign in history, and that is share a Coke with. They put people's names on bottles and cans of Coke, and they exponentially increase their sales. I think that the incremental impact on Coca-Cola was $2 billion of doing that. They made $2 billion more by putting people's names on bottles and cans of their product. Like such a simple idea, but really material incremental impact. I absolutely, you know, love 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 that campaign.
Those numbers are mind-boggling, but I will also say, anytime I see a Lisa can, I definitely go and take it off the shelf.
Yeah,
It works.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, my last question for you is, what's your favorite piece of tech?
um, that's a good question. You know what? Again, with simplicity in mind, I really like tools like Optimizely because again, it's that low hanging fruit for businesses. What are the small tweaks that they can make to their online experience that are going to improve conversion rate? And I think what platforms like Optimizely, and there's other platforms out there as well, but Optimizely is the most famous conversion rate optimization platform. What they've done is they've really democratized and made it much more accessible, that kind of testing around user experience. And that I think is really exciting. And those small tweaks are, they can be worth millions and millions of pounds. To businesses. So I think Optimizely is a great platform for its simplicity and its accessibility.
Brilliant. All right, thank you so much, Damien, for being with us here today. It was an incredible chat, and I really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed it too.
For those of you who want to dive deeper into this topic, our white paper, From Cost to Profit, The Marketer's Roadmap to Securing Investment, analyzes Damien's points in much greater detail, helping businesses identify the steps they need to take to turn marketing into a recognized source of profit. Be sure to give it a read. And as always, don't forget to follow us on social or visit our website at incubeta.com for more updates and insights. Until next time, I'm Lisa Morton, and this has been The Digital Edge. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.